Starting Be'ezer Hashem, Maamar Shevuos, Siman Gimel. And we're holding that the Maram Rottenberg said that the Mishnah that says that a husband and a wife are allowed to force each other to go to Eretz Yisrael using the ksuba as their weapon, that was said only Bizman Shebeis Mikdash Kayim. But Bizman Hazeh, it's only the husband that could force the wife, not the wife that could force the husband. And the question that the Chassam Sofer and others asked on this was that, it's not a kasha on the Maram Rottenberg, but it's a kasha on the Psak, because the Shulchan Aruch paskins that an Eved could say to his master, if he's living in Chutz La'aretz, he wants to be oil of Eretz Yisrael, the Eved could say, either free me or sell me to somebody there, or come up with me. He basically forces his master to let him move to Eretz Yisrael. So why is an Eved Bizman, and that the poskim say beferish that it's nogeh even Bizman Hazeh. So why is an Eved Bizman Hazeh better than an Isha Bizman Hazeh? So previously in the Siman base, the teretz was that an Eved is a pasuk, so we don't dash in time of the Krah. So the Torah says Eved lois taskir Eved al Adonov. So therefore it's nogeh even Bizman Hazeh. Mashenkin Isha is not a pasuk; it's a derabbanan. That goes after the Tam, so you look at the Tam is because of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, so therefore Bizman Hazeh it's less. Okay, but now he's going to say from the Korban Nesanel a different teretz. Uva Korban Nesanel soif ksubas, uva gittin perak hashaleach, siman mem gimel. The Korban Nesanel is in two places. It's in ksubas and it's in gittin. Hevi al din eved shebarach la'aretz midivrei Rambam. But the Korban Nesanel says that this din of the Eved is nogeh even Bizman Hazeh. Sheharetz biyad akum, when Eretz Yisrael is in the hands of Goyim. Because of Al-Zeh Korban Nesanel, Shezeh afilu l'tois v'sviram, the Isha Bizman Hazeh she'amar la'alois ein koifim l'baal. That this din that an Eved could force is even according to the Maram Rottenberg, who holds that an Isha cannot force. So he says beferish that this chiluk is true, that the Rebbe said in Siman base. The nearest Shehavin came. What was the raya of the Korban Nesanel? How did he know that the din of Isha is even according to the Maram? The din of Eved is even according to the Maram. Shehavin came medivrei atur. He was medayik in the Torah. Shekasha lama hutzrach loim rasham behilchos avadim shedin zeh noeg afilu bizman zeh. Why does the Torah say in Hilchos Avadim? And by the way, it's in Shulchan Aruch also, and you can look at it right here. It's in the Maram Koimis in page 2. It's in Yardei Reish Tam Chazayin, Sif Pei Dalad. It says, Eved she'amar la'alois l'Eretz Yisrael, an Eved who wants his master to move him to Eretz Yisrael. Koifin es rabbi la'alois imoy. We force the master to go with him. Oy yimkor oisoi l'mishi alei, or else he has to sell him to somebody else who's going to Eretz Yisrael. Sham. If they're living in Eretz Yisrael and the master wants to leave, he can't force the Eved to leave unless the slave agrees. He copies over the Torah that this din is even Bizman Hazeh. So the question is going to be that why did the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch have to speak out that something is even Bizman Hazeh? Everything in the Shulchan Aruch is only Bizman Hazeh. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring things that are only Bizman Shebeis Mikdash Kayim. Yeah? So, he says, Haloi kol dinei haTorah kachem. The whole every din in the Torah is like that. Ki ma she'eino noeg bizman hazeh lo yehevi haTorah klal. He doesn't bring down things that aren't nogeh today. Bishlama harambam zal shedarkei lahavi kol adinim af elu she'enam noegim bizman hazeh. Bishlama the Rambam, he brings everything. He brings every din in Shas, even if it's not even Karbanos, Beis Mikdash. So hutzrach lefarish sham behilchos avadim shedin zeh noeg afilu bizman hazeh. So the Rambam would have to explain this, that this is bizman hazeh. Aval b'divrei atur b'lav achi baruhu shekol ma shehevi noeg bizman hazeh. Anyway, we know that anything the Torah says is nogeh bizman hazeh. V'loi hutzrach lefaret kain be'oisei adin be'pratius. The Torah didn't have to speak out. V'lachein hevi Korban Nesanel shekasav zeh yan sheshitas hatoisif v'aram b'kviyas ho'isha shehura koicha bizman hazeh. That the Korban Nesanel took out from this that he must be saying something else. He's saying that even though Bizman Hazeh, the wife din is not nogeh, because we said that the Maram Rottenberg holds that the wife can't force the husband. That's only the wife, but the Eved could. L'chein bir shebe'eved eino kain. Okay, ve'alkol panim kaseh beferish k'moshe kasavti. Anyway, we see the Korban Nesanel says, like the Rebbe said in Siman Beis, Leil l'dasa beis Shmuel, shehevi mishitas haram shehura koyach isha bizman hazeh. That isha is weaker bizman hazeh af shebe'eved eino din kain, despite the fact that an eved is not like that. All right. So far we have the chiluk between eved and isha, but we don't have the reason for the chiluk. So now he's going to go into the reason. So he says, Ela hatam shekasav v'korban nesanel b'perek hashaleach. The reason that the Korban Nesanel gives in Gittin, in Hashaleach, l'chalik b'zeh, l'shaynoi ein muvan. It's not understandable. Shekasav d'shani hasem b'isha sheyesh sakanas drachim. Oy sheyesh tzimtzum parnasa, ma she'en shaykh be'eved shekvar barach. So he says, an isha is different because there's danger when you're traveling to Eretz Yisrael, and she can't force her husband to undertake that danger, and also there's a lack of parnasa, there's a lack of income. Maybe the husband has a job in Chutz La'aretz, and when he moves to Eretz Yisrael, he's not going to have a job. So there are reasons why she can't force him. Masha'en shaykh be'eved, it's not applied to an eved because shekvar barach, because he already ran away. The mashma shaloi kasav kein harambam ve'atur el be'eved shekvar barach. So it's mashma from the Korban Nesanel that the Rambam and the Tur are only talking about an eved who already ran away, and now from Eretz Yisrael he's there trying to get his master to either come up or free him. So the problem is, it's not true. Haloi be'emes kasav kein af be'eved shaloi barach adayin. The Rambam, the Tur, the Shulchan Aruch, we just read it inside. It says that even an eved who wants to go up to Eretz Yisrael is allowed to force his master, not only because he ran away already. El Sharoit Alois, Kimavur Betur Beis Yosef Yordei Siman Reish Tamach Zayin, V'chein Hu B'Shulchan Aruch Sham, Siman Reish Tamach Zayin Sif Pei Dal. That's what I just copied off. The Mayri Sham Rak Midin Eved Sharoit Alois. It's talking about an Eved who wants to go up. The cost of Shenoig Afilu Bizman Hazeh, and on that he says it's Bizman Hazeh too. Av She'ein Sham B'Chol Asif Shum Remez Adayin Midin Eved Shabarach. Ad Sif Shalachrav Sif Pei. The din of Eved that ran away already is only mentioned in the second Sif here, Sif Pei. And I'll read it inside. Eved Shabarach Michutz La'aretz. If he already ran away to Eretz Yisrael, Ein Machzirin Oisei La'avdus. We're not allowed to bring him back and make him a slave again. The all of them are Loisaskir Eved Al Adoinav. That's the pasuk in the Torah. Don't return a slave to his master. V'oimrim l'Rabbi sheyichtov lo get shichror. We tell the master to write him a get shichror, to write him a document to free him. And then the Eved has to pay his value, it says, because he can't just, take away the master's property. He bought this Eved for good money, but in any case he has to free him. And just so you can see the Korban Nesanel inside, on page 1 of the Maamar, I brought it here. He basically doesn't say any more than what the Rebbe quotes him. He's saying, he just says, Be'eved shabarach from chutz la'aretz akasim medaber v'din zeh noeg afilu bizman hazeh she'ha'aretz b'yado eved kachavim Rambam betur af agav de'isha she'amr la'alois l'Eretz Yisrael ein koifin l'ba'al bizman hazeh. Even though a wife can't force her husband, k'ma she'kasev betur even noez siman ein hey yesh loymar shani hasam mishum de'yesh takanas drachim. The wife is different because there's a sakana of travel, or yesh sham tzimtzum parnasa, or lack of income. Ma'ashein shaykh be'eved shekvar barach. The Eved already ran away. V'ayin sham bebach. Now here's the key words. He says, look in the bach. And the bach is going to give us a reason to be mechalik, to make a distinction between a wife and an Eved. Okay? So, the Korban Nesanel's reason we don't really understand, and I don't think the Rebbe is going to end up explaining it at all, because it's very bekitzer and very cryptic, but he says the Bach, and the Bach does give a real reason, and that we can understand, and we'll, Mirz Hashem, see that now. So the next paragraph, he's going to bring down the Bach. Gam kavanasai b'chilik zeh eino muva milshoinoi. He says his svara for saying this reason of kvar barach is not understandable. Oh, and I was going to say that it's not just the fact that the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch bring the din by an Eved that wants to flee, right? But it's also that the reason of Kvar Baruch also doesn't make sense, because what's the point that the Eved already ran to Eretz Yisrael? The master is still living here, and the master, if he's going to go to Eretz Yisrael, he's going to have to get a job. he's going to have to undergo the sakana of travel. So the same exact reasons that apply to a wife apply to a master of an Eved who wants the Eved wants him to go up. Right? So that's what he means here, that the chiluk is not even understandable. But he tells us to look in the Bach. On the Bach we can understand this subject, because the Tur asks on the Remeir Rottenberg, if this Yushalmi that says that the husband can force the wife is talking Bisman Hazeh, then why? If there's no mitzvah Bisman Hazeh, then even the husband shouldn't be able to force the wife. So Kostav al Bach, the Bach says, the Bisman Abayis Shaloi Hayadoichik Mizoinus Koifin Oisoi Lalois Kemoshe Koifin Oisa. That he says like this: the chiluk is that in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, people had pranasa wherever they went. Things were good. The economy was good. Eretz Yisrael was booming. So people could go and there wouldn't be a problem with pranasa. So everybody could force anybody else to go. But nowadays, that it's a problem. Eretz Yisrael is like a wasteland. It's a midbar. You're going to go there, you're not going to necessarily have pranasa. So now we say like this: the husband has the responsibility to bring in the income. The wife doesn't. So if the wife is going to say, I want to go, we say, Meichatesi, how could you force your husband to go? You don't have the responsibility. He doesn't have this assurance that he's going to have income there, so maybe he doesn't want to go for that reason. Okay, it's easy for you to say because you don't have to worry about it. That's what the Bach's going to say. He says, nowadays that the parnasa is very, very difficult, we force her. If the husband wants to go, he feels sure of himself that he'll be able to make it, we can force her. And her support is obligatory on the husband. Any place that they live. Now he could say to her, if she wants to force him, she could say, no, I have a problem with income. I don't know if I'm going to find a job there. That this taina, the Baal is more powerful than the Isha. And if you look in the first booklet of Maamar on page 9, I have it's in this one. Page 9, I have the tour here with the Bach highlighted. You look at the bottom of the page there, it says Yushalmi, who writes the Lalois, Ve'en teretz zeh maspik. The Torah says that this teretz is not good. This teretz that the Rabbi Rottenberg says that the husband can force the wife and the wife can't force the husband bisman hazeh is not maspik, is not good enough, because the bisman abayis shaloi hayadoichik mizoinus koifin oisei lalois kashem shekoifin oisa. That in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. So this is what the Bach is answering. It is a good teretz. The Vizman Abai Shaloi Hayadoichik Mizoinus Koifin Oisei Lalois Kshem Shekoifin Oisa. Then you used to force him and her, because anybody knows they can go there to Israel and get a job there. Nowadays that it's hard, we only force her, because her support is on the responsibility of the husband. So this is exactly what we just read. Okay. Now, next paragraph. Now, he's going to take a little detour here and talk about the whole inyan of going to Eretz Yisrael. This is important for nowadays also. The whole inyan of going to Eretz Yisrael when a person doesn't know for sure that they're going to have income there. And it's based on a Shalosh Tshuva Sefer that's hard to find today, but it's called the Me'il Tzedakah. It's written about 300 years ago. And here it is on page 4, 3 actually, 3, 4, and 5 in this week's Maamar, this booklet. And basically he handles here a shaila that they asked him, 3 people with wives and families, decided to go there to Israel from Europe, and they had little children. He says, B'nei Shnaim Shalosh Shanim, 2 and 3 year old children, and everybody else in the town was very upset at them. They said, how could you do such a thing, undertake such a dangerous journey? And the Beis Din of the town went so far as to ask them to go. So they sent this Shaila to the Me'il Tzedakah to ask him, is it mutter to go or not? And should they go? So basically he says yes. He says they should go, and he brings down the Ramban here in the beginning of the Tshuva. He says, "V'hinei matzanu Ramban mana mitzvah zois b'chlal mitzvahs." The mitzvah of living in Eretz Yisrael is bisman hazeh too, and the Ramban counts it. Mikra v'yirishtem moisa v'yishavtem ba. So the Ramban counts it, but then he brings later on that the Tosfos b'shem Rabbeinu Chaim Cohen says that it is not a mitzvah bisman hazeh. He says, "Ibra Tosfos b'ksubas b'shem Rabbeinu Chaim Cohen kosfu b'shem hazeh ein mitzvah lader b'Eretz Yisrael. Ki yesh mitzvahs rabbis hatluyas pa'aretz she'iyaf shalakaimon." This is there are a lot of mitzvahs that are difficult to be mekayim. Bisman hazeh, impossible to be mekayim. V'kama oinshim she'ein yachol yichoyim lizayer bohen. There are many punishments that are very difficult if you're over on truma, tevel, shvis, and these things. V'lamod aleim is very difficult. V'oid cost, so therefore the Rabbeinu Chaim Cohen says not to go there to Israel. V'oid cost b'shabizman de'ikar sakanas drachim. Tosfos says in Ksubas also that when there's sakana on the way, ein hadin lachuf la'alois. There's no din to force a spouse to go up. So he says on this, Mash Kosev b'shem Rabbeinu Chaim keneged kvar Kosev harav harit. That's the Ma'arit, an early Achron. B'tshuva chelik yudalad simin chavches b'neim sichloi, with his beautiful mind. He says hoichiach te'ein eze talmud toya kosvoi. He says it can't be the Rabbeinu Chaim Cohen who say such a thing. It must be a Talmud who wrote it in his name, and it wasn't true. Ein sham zeh atam b'shvil ha-mitzvah b'shvil ha-mitzvah v'loi l'samchahu. He says it's not reliable. Klal. Basically, he says the mitzvah is bisman hazeh also. There's no such thing as a mitzvah being batal. And later on, mitzvah Hashem, we're going to get to this. That what did Rabbeinu Chaim Cohen mean b'chlal? Why did Rabbeinu Chaim Cohen say that you just don't do something because it's difficult to do? Well, it's pshat. Difficult to keep. So work on it. What kind of answer is that? And I have in the first booklet, in the last page, copied Igros Moshe about this. Maybe we'll read this part of it now because it's Megillah now. The last page of the first booklet, that one. Igros Moshe in the new Chelik test that just came out. He has some shtiklach Torah, different parts of Shas. So here he has on the Sugi and Ksubas of Kfiyas Abal, and he starts out with a question that the question that we're really talking about here in Vayoel Moshe, which is the question of why the Maram in Rottenburg holds that the husband can force the wife, but not vice versa. If Bisman Zeh there's no mitzvah, then there's no mitzvah at all. And if there is a mitzvah, then they should both be able to force. So Monashach, what's going on here? So that's what the Igros Moshe asks also. So Rav Moshe here says, look in the paragraph starting with a base that says, "Bir shitas Rabbeinu Chaim Cohen shebizman hazeh ein mitzvah lader b'Eretz Yisrael. U'mashe kosav mizman habayis. Ma'ishno mizman habayis." He says, "V'anir lanis daiti b'zeh Dahat tzarich lahavin shitas Rabbeinu Chaim Cohen. The achshav ein mitzvah lader b'Eretz Yisrael machma sheni toisav sham kam mitzvahs b'oinshim she'ein ani yicholim lizar bohem." He says, what's the pshat that you don't go somewhere because it's difficult? If that was the problem, that was the problem back then too. Umikol makom yesh mitzvah. Machmas de'adrab kol echad tzarich lishtadol lischayev b'mitzvahs. Forget, you have to try to make yourself chayev in mitzvahs. V'lo lis pater mehem. The Gemara in Soita that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to go there to Israel, and Hashem said you only want to go because of the mitzvahs. I'm consider like you did them. But al kapanim, you see, it's better to be b'chayev yourself in something. How could you be misalik the mitzvah bisman hazeh? V'tzorich loimer diyesh chilik gadol. The bisman habayis vada yesh chiyuv gadol al kol echad b'Yisrael lagu b'Eretz Yisrael. He says, in the time of the Beis Hamikdash there was a chiyuv to do it. Shasham hukpa makom kol Yisrael lagu sham. That everyone had to live there. U'lischayev b'chol mitzvah hatzviyah sham. But can't just say, I'm not going to do my chiyuv because it's difficult. I'm scared of the einish. That's like every other mitzvah in the Torah. But nowadays that we're in Galus, it's not the place for all of Klal Yisrael to live. It's not shaykh to say that every year is chayav to go to Eretz Yisrael and live there. You're doing a mitzvah, but it's like a mitzvah kiyumis. It's a mitzvah, optional mitzvah. But now therefore, if you have a problem that you're afraid you might not be able to keep the mitzvahs, that's how he explains it. Okay, but the Mild Stalker didn't like that, and the Marit also didn't like that. They held that there's no such thing. Basically, so then he goes on and he says, what about the sakana? The Mild Stalker says on page 4 of this week's, says, what about the sakana? So he says, Umasha chashtu l'sakana sheyesh limnoya havadai af bizman habayis kol shahaya boy mishum sakana gluya mo'inem malachu v'lalos. He says, the din of forcing a spouse or whatever to go up there to Israel, even in the old days, if there was a sakana, you couldn't do it. So sakana is not a reason to change the din. He says, it depends on the situation and times. If you're living in times when it's dangerous. If not, not. And he goes on and he says basically that sometimes there's no danger, and he brings Achronim who say that from Italy it wasn't dangerous to travel by ship, and if merchants are traveling every day back and forth, and people are going with little children, it's not considered a sakana, even though there is some danger involved, because every traveling is always dangerous. There's pirates on the sea and different reasons that ships could sink, but it's not a danger that most people would be deterred by. So, therefore, he says that's not an answer. Finally, at the end, this is the part we're going to quote on page 5. He says, "Omnam kein sarich batchila tnai echad sheyesh loy makom muchan u'mezuman liyos matzi loy sham parnasa berevach." That you have to have parnasa in Eretz Yisrael when you're going to get there. Kamasha Kostav Trumas Adeshin, V'gam B'kolboy and Vayin Tashbatz. The kol she ein loy sham parnasa muchenes ma'avira al daitoi v'aldas Cohen echas v'shalom. That if someone doesn't have parnasa, there's a Gemara that says in Erevin that if a person is an ani, he can go against his own mind and against Hashem, because out of desperation, people could do anything. So it's not good to put yourself in a matzav when you're going to become an ani. So therefore, he says not to go if you don't have parnasa there. And he says the ketanim also, you have to worry about it later on. He says v'choyvhu l'ketanim v'chas t'sham yesh lachu sheyetzu l'tarbus ra'ah. That the ketanim might go off the derech if they're subjected to this situation of poverty. Okay, let's go back and look inside Vayoel Moshe now. V'hinei zeh vadai shekasvu adin b'stama v'loy chilku b'davar beinim hu ashir muflag oy sheyesh loy sham esek toiv l'parnasa. That the Bach that said that you're not mechuyev to go, you're not mechuyev to force the wife can't force the husband to go because he could say I don't have parnasa. It's even by a rich husband. Let's say you're talking about a millionaire. He has enough money to last him the rest of his life, or he has a job waiting for him there. Even such a husband could say no, because he's going to say later on that it's because things could change. You never know. So he says, "B'frat l'divrei ha'me'il tzedakah b'siman chavav v'huba b'piskei tshuva siman ayin hey." It's brought in the bottom of Shulchan Aruch piskei tshuva da'af shehu min hasoivim legamri k'shidus Ramban. Even the me'il tzedakah who holds completely like the Ramban, she yeshivas Eretz Yisrael, he mitzvah deraisa, living in Eretz Yisrael is mitzvah deraisa, gam bizman hazeh, v'herich lidchais kol ha'chokim hazeh. He goes on and on, he talks against Reb Chaim Cohen, who is against this. Gam docha shitas Rabbeinu Chaim, u'masik de'achiv la'alois gam bizman hazeh. Okay, and he says, afilu im bonim ketanim, even if you have little children. Ve'ein shum taina b'davar. There's no excuses. He says there is one excuse, and that is if you're going to have plenty of income there. If you don't have a good parnasa there, that poverty can make people do things that are wrong. Even though you know you could go there and serve Hashem, and you won't have a problem with the poverty. You can't force your little children to do it, because it's a negative thing for them. They may not be able to withstand the trials. They'll go off the derech, chas v'shalom. He says, what about a person who is going to go live off the chalukah? You know, there used to be Koil or Meir Baal Nes. People lived in Yerushalayim, they learned Torah, and they got supported by the Yidden in Europe. Every country had their own kuppah, and they sent money to it, collected for it. So he says, let's say someone has a job in Europe, and he wants to go there to Israel and live off the tzedakah. He says, no. It's not good. It's great to be living off your own work. The Gemara says it's gadol more than Yir Shemaim, because it says Ashrecha v'toivlach. Now, I just want to point out there were Yidden who did this, who went up to Eretz Yisrael and lived off the chalukah. So what's pshat in them, right? And what's pshat if someone wants to go learn in Koil in Eretz Yisrael? So pashtus, the answer is that these people don't have an income in Chutz La'aretz either. So they're not exactly going to lose anything by going there. They're going to get tzedakah here too. And furthermore, it could be that they're not going because of the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. The Mil Tzedakah is talking about people. He's saying you want to weigh on the scale. On one side of the scale, Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. On the other side, you have you're going to become poor and you're going to have to take money. So he says it outweighs it. But that's talking when you're just questioning about Eretz Yisrael. But let's say you want to go there to learn. Let's say there's a yeshiva there you want to learn in. Or in the days of the old Yishuv, people wanted to go and be close to the Gedolim that were there, and there are other reasons to go there besides Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. So it could be that that's not steer to this. Okay. The Chassam Sofer B'tshuva Evan Oezer Chelak Aleph Siman Kuf Lamed Beis Kasav Al Divrei Mil Tzedakah Hohelu Shedvarav Mesukin Lechech. The Chassam Sofer says the Mil Tzedakah is sweet to the palate. V'hechlit Kein La'alacha. He paskins like him. Okay, so basically he's saying this is l'chuli alma. Everybody agrees to this Mil Tzedakah. Even those who hold that it's a mitzvah to live in Eretz Yisrael, like he himself holds, agrees to this. And Kal v'chomer, those who hold that it's not. That's going to be this next paragraph. He says, V'hinei loy mibai ladas kama poiskim shesoivim she'en bizman hazeh mitzvah klal la'alois Eretz Yisrael. Of course, according to those poiskim who hold that there's no mitzvah at all, kasher yisbar b'oirech b'maimar hasheni, in Maamar Sheni, Maamar Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, the Rabbi is going to prove that there are a lot of Rishonim that hold there's no mitzvah at all. And really, it's not just Rabbeinu Chaim Cohen. It's interesting that the Me'il Tzedakah, when he wants to bring a Rishon who holds there's no mitzvah, he brings Rabbeinu Chaim Cohen. But the Rabbi is going to prove that there were a lot more. Levayer kol hashitas shebashas u'poiskim b'mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. El afilu l'das ha-Me'il Tzedakah. Even according to the Mil Tzedakah, who is one of those who hold that there is a mitzvah nowadays. I copied these words before. That's only if someone has parnasa there. So everyone, side those who hold it's not a mitzvah, and so those who hold it is a mitzvah, are saying that it's only when you have parnasa there. Hagam sheladina adayin tzarachin im yesh lechalik b'hach dina te'akol ma'alin heicha she'en lo yisham makom parnasa. That it's not so clear if the whole din of forcing, let's say even the husband forcing the wife, which the Maram Rottenberg says is nogeya, maybe that doesn't apply either when there's no parnasa. That's not clear, he says. I'm going to speak about this later. But fakert, when the wife wants to force the husband and he doesn't want to, he has a good answer even if he has a job waiting for him. Or else he's a millionaire. Still the Bach makes sense, because there's a difference between the wife and the husband. Because parnasa is like a wheel that moves around in the world. People become rich, people become poor. Okay? The Rabbanan didn't make any distinctions. It's something that shchiach tuva shal medoichik mezainis. It's very common there to have a lack of parnasa. The husband has a good answer to his wife. That what? That even though he's a millionaire now, maybe things will change and he won't get parnasa there. She doesn't have to worry about parnasa. So it's called the Baal has to do all the tricks in the world to get her to support her. So now we know what the difference is between a wife and a slave. The Mishnah says that a person doesn't want to support his slave, he's allowed to. He's allowed to not support him. But if he doesn't want to support his wife, it's too bad, he has to. So, Ein Sham Besugi Daf Yud Beis. V'chein hu b'shulchan aruch Yordei Siman Reish Tamach Zayin she'eino mechuyev lazenes avdoi. That if the master doesn't have enough money or he doesn't want to for some reason, he doesn't have to give any support to his slave. Im kein yesh chiluk bar bein isha le'eved. So now we understand the difference between the wife and the slave. L'fi divrei Bach. Shalchein hu rakoicho isha b'shvil she'ein lo daigas parnasa. That the wife doesn't have the responsibility. So yesh loy meshaper shebishvil shekal beineh halachu v'sabal l'chach bishvil sheisha ein tzrich lidog av parnasa. That for her it's a light thing in her eyes to force the Baal to go, because she doesn't have to worry about it. L'chein loy nasnu l'chacham koyach zeh. So the chacham didn't give her a koyach to force him. Mashen keno eved yesh loy dagas parnasa k'moy ha'adon. He has to worry about his support just as much as the master does, because he, in a pinch, right, he won't support him, and then he'll have to go out looking for his own livelihood. Let's say they come to Eretz Yisrael, they find it's terrible economy, the master can't get a job there, so the Eved will have to go looking for work. Besides the fact that he still has to work for his master, even though his master's not supporting him. So he's really in trouble if that happens. So he's taking upon himself a big responsibility if he wants to go there to Israel. So we're not afraid. It's not shchiach. It's not common that he'll force his master in an irresponsible way. Yeah. Therefore, they didn't make a distinction between the Eved and the master. We understand that chiluk that the Beis Shmuel and the Korban Nesalah make. Although, as I said before, we don't really understand the Korban Nesalah's words, but we understand his chiluk with the Bach. Okay, he says there's one problem that's left to answer. That the Korban Nesalah says this is pshat in the Tur, right? That's not good. The Tur was the one who asked on the Maram in Rottenburg, that, he asked, why is Bizman Azeh, if there's no mitzvah, why could the husband force the wife? He didn't understand the Maram in Rottenburg. So now if the Bach answers it, obviously the Tur didn't like the answer. So how could you say this vort in the Tur? He says, Ki hiksha al aram u'v'divrei Bach loy kasha midi. It's not a kasha at all according to the Bach. He says maybe we could answer that the Tur didn't really push away the Ram Rottenburg totally. He understood that there was a chiluk. He said there's not a good enough teretz. He has a teretz. It's just not good enough. It could be he understood what the Bach was saying, was going to say, but it wasn't enough for him. Therefore, when he writes in Hilchos Avadim, when he said even Bizman Hazeh, he meant even the Ram would agree, like the Korban Nesanel says. After the Yidei feel klal shitas Ram, even though he himself doesn't agree to the Ram. After the Yidei feel klal. We find sometimes the Gemara says something, and one man the Amr says something about the other, and really he doesn't hold of it. Okay, so that concludes Siman Gimel. So, anything that you want to bring up before we go on?
No, I can think of.
Okay.